public service and brought to you today by your television provider.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters he was still interested in passing targeted legislation for coronavirus relief and that he remained focused on Senate business and not the presidential election. He spoke from Capitol Hill after Senate Republicans met behind closed doors for their weekly luncheon with Vice President Pence in attendance.
I believe that they should all have to take their mask off. That's right, and state their names for the oath of the Constitution.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We had a good discussion about wrapping up the next couple of months. I think there's a bipartisan and bicameral desire to get a omnibus appropriation bill. Senator Shelby gave an extensive report about the work that's going on there. I'll be talking to the Speaker about that as well. I think both sides think it would be better to do an omnibus appropriation bill before the end of the year rather than another short-term punt. So hopefully we can get there. On the possibility of another coronavirus package, it seems to me that with 6.9% unemployment, third quarter GDP growth of astonishing proportions, that even though we still have significant economic problems, we need to think about, if we're going to come up with a bipartisan package here, about what size is appropriate. It seems to me that snag that hung us up for months is still there. I don't think the current situation demands a multi-trillion-dollar package. So I think it should be highly targeted, very similar to what I put on the floor both in October and September. And of course, we're all excited about the Pfizer vaccine announcement yesterday. Senator Blunt knows an awful lot about that. I think the country is going to have a sense of relief that we may be able to finally see the light at the end of the tunnel with regard to this awful virus. In the meantime, we're all trying to emphasize, as all of us have here in the Senate since the 1st of May, until we get a significant number of Americans the vaccine, we're going to continue to wear our masks and practice social distancing and try to be a good example for the rest of the country.
Thank you, Leader, and I want to thank my colleagues again for the privilege of serving whip and look forward to working with this leadership team in the next Congress. We have a lot of work ahead of us when it comes to continuing to deal with the pandemic, COVID relief, and advancing a pro-jobs, pro-growth agenda for the American people. And I'm glad the election is behind us. I think we all are. I think there were at least 3 takeaways from the election. One was that there was not a blue wave. There wasn't even a blue ripple. I think that the election results made it clear that a lot of what the Democrats, pollsters, folks in the media were suggesting was going to happen did not happen at all. Secondly, it was a rejection of the far left Schumer, Pelosi, AOC agenda. And third, if you look at what happened with not a single Republican losing a House race, actually gaining seats in the House of Representatives, not a single state legislature flipping, in fact, Republicans gaining ground in the state legislatures. And I'm quite confident that after Georgia, we are going to be in the majority here in the United States Senate. It really was a validation of the things that the Republican majority and the Republican Party are doing to try and advance and further the interests of the American people. So having taken all that into perspective, I think now we have an opportunity to move forward. The presidential race will be resolved at some point, but there's a lot of work that we have to do for the American people. And I look forward to working with our team, with our members, hopefully with Democrats who decide that they want to work with us now that it's been made clear that what they were trying to put forward is not what the American people want to see happen here, that we can get some good things done, that we can deal with the ongoing crisis in front of us with respect to the pandemic before the end of the year, fund the government, hopefully get a defense authorization bill done, and then tee some things up to get to work next year for the American people.
Well, Leader, thanks for mentioning the vaccines. I do think that now we're beyond the election, that a lot of the skepticism that people have had about the vaccine effort will go away. Once people look seriously at this, I think they're going to see that, frankly, the administration and the Congress providing $18 billion to invest in vaccines and therapeutics, and about $12.5 billion of that into vaccines, rewrote the chapter of the pandemic book on how you do this. We're at least a year ahead of where anybody would have thought we would have been in February or March of this year. Pfizer was a partner, a little different partner. Every one of these partnerships is a little bit different. The Pfizer deal was, we're confident in our vaccine. We're sure we're going to get there. If you'll guarantee the federal government will distribute and you'll buy $2 billion worth of it, that's the deal with us. AstraZeneca, Moderna, a little bit differently, but all of these companies, plus about 3 more, are all making vaccines as they get near the end of the trial period. So there'll be several million copies of any of these vaccines available on day one, and once you get that system started, it begins to produce vaccines pretty quickly. I think the distribution effort has been well thought out. The states have all submitted a plan. Hopefully the states will all respond to the proposal of how the vaccine would be allocated to healthcare workers and first responders first, people most in danger of having the worst results if they got the virus. Nursing homes would be a big group in that. And then the essential employees of the country, the school bus drivers, the teachers, the daycare center workers, the grocery store clerk, the food processing employee, people who are in a lot of contact with other people. If they can't get it, they can't give it to you. So every day, as you take these groups off the danger zone of the vaccine, not only they get safer, but everybody else gets safer. And by the time you get to the end of those groups, you've had about 50% of the American population would have had the ability to have the vaccine, and then we'll see what happens with everybody else. And on those companies that we thought had a better chance of being successful than not, and they're not successful, the American taxpayers are going to lose a little money on that. And in fact, if we didn't have a failure here, we weren't trying hard enough. We weren't pushing the envelope for enough. Remember, all these vaccines will be a little bit different from any of the others, and they're all being produced irrespective of what's happening anywhere else. So this is really big news. I, again, hope as we now move beyond the election discussion to a real pandemic response discussion, that people are going to appreciate what's really happened, both what the administration did and I'd suggest most importantly what the Congress was willing to appropriate money for.
Just a few things this afternoon. Coming through this last election cycle, which was very difficult for so many, we actually saw some pretty incredible gains by conservative women. And what we could say is this was the year for the GOP women. We picked up seats in the House, and we are also gaining another woman in our Republican conference, Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming. So it has been a really exciting year, and one where we hope that young conservative women will take a look at the makeup of Congress and determine that there is opportunity out there for them as well. So very exciting stuff going on. Second, of course, as the leader mentioned, hopefully we can get a COVID-19 recovery package. I think that's important. It's something that I continue to hear even while I was on the campaign trail, how Iowans really hoped we could step up and get a targeted relief bill done. There are still so many people that are hurting out across the nation, and we would love to provide them relief. So we're hopeful that Speaker Pelosi will get her caucus together, come up to the table and actually work with us on these efforts. And then finally, folks, tomorrow is Veterans Day. And this, of course, is an important day for me, but I would like to remind all Iowans and all Americans to please say thank you to a veteran, someone who has worn our nation's uniform in the armed services, and thank them for continuing to contribute to the great free society that we have in the most incredible nation on the face of the planet. Thank you.
Leader McConnell, this is the third or fourth time that the president has alleged election fraud without proof. He did it during the 2016 primaries, he did it after the 2016 general election, and he's doing it now. Why do you continue to indulge him?
Well, what I'm gonna do here in the Senate is concentrate on the business that we have left to do, which I mentioned a while ago. An omnibus appropriation bill, maybe another coronavirus package, and let the presidential election go through the various stages that it goes through under the Constitution. There will be apparently litigation. Those cases will be decided. And then the Electoral College will meet. And then we'll have the inauguration. But I am going to concentrate on what we are trying to do here in the remainder of this Congress.
Was there any fraud in your Senate race or any Senate race that you know of?
I'm sorry?
Was there any fraud in your Senate race or any Senate race that you know of?
I don't know. If the risk of bragging, it wasn't very close.
The bipartisan 9/11 report said that the immediate transition period after the 2004 Bush fight contributed to the lack of security preparedness before 9/11. Shouldn't the GSA sign off on the requisite paperwork now to let the transition begin and avoid a similar crisis?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have an interrupted transition to whoever is the next administration. I think we ought to quit all the hand wringing, not act like this is extraordinary. We're going to get through this period and we'll swear in the winner on January the 20th, 2021, just like we have every 4 years since 1793.
Should the GSA sign the paperwork?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Senate Democrats spoke to reporters about the coronavirus pandemic, the Affordable Care Act, and the results of the 2020 election. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer also responded to comments made by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about transitioning to a second Trump administration. This is 25 minutes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank Senators Casey and Baldwin and Murphy for joining us today. Now, we all know that America is in the midst of a third wave of COVID-19 cases. We are seeing the record-breaking numbers of new infections, hospitalizations are rising, death rate much too high. After President Trump's failure to contain the virus, it was so encouraging today for our caucus at our lunch to hear
Identify
Dr.
yourself,
Vivek
Mr.
Murthy,
Schumer. We can't tell who you are with that
co-chair of
mask on.
President-elect Biden's Corona Advisory Board. You know what was great? He was a scientist, he knew the facts, and he'll be listened to.
No.
Whenever Fauci came to speak before us, we said, this is great, but we know Trump will pay no attention to him. But Dr. Murthy was just brilliant in his presentation, and he's going to have real input. So that made all of us feel a lot better. You could sort of feel the change in atmosphere in this whole town just when we had Dr. Murthy there today, and everyone felt very good about it. Now, it's clear that Senator Biden's team, President-elect Biden's team is ready to hit the ground running, and there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel finally, the COVID tunnel, and it'll get brighter every day. We'll have an administration that acknowledges the crisis, that takes this job seriously, that will listen to the counsel of scientists and doctors. And they understand, the president's team, president-elect's team, understands this is a problem that goes way beyond just the private sector alone. You definitely need a strong, robust government involvement. They're going to work to drive down the infection rate, ensure vaccines and new treatments are safe. And he made it clear, just having a vaccine, Leader McConnell said, well, we have a vaccine, we don't need a bill. It's not close to enough. There are so many other things that have to be done in addition to the vaccine, and it's going to take, unfortunately, even under the best of circumstances, a considerable amount of time before everybody is vaccinated. It's also going to take considerable educating the public that the vaccine is okay before everyone is vaccinated. So we feel very, very strongly that we have to move forward. The needs of the American people didn't go away after the election. They're still hurting. Families hit hardest by the pandemic still are struggling to keep food on the table, a roof over their heads. So we're going to have to work together. And we are looking for a comprehensive bill that meets the needs of America. And we agree with the House on this issue. So, pressure is on Republicans to deliver. Leader McConnell and all of my Republican colleagues will have an opportunity to show the American people that they're ready to get to work and meet the moment of this crisis. Democrats are going to work to get a strong bill done. We hope our Republican colleagues will join us to finish the job. And I'm just going to make one other point on another issue, and that is that so many Republicans today seem to be backing the president on his lawsuits. Make no mistake about it. This is this is not one state where there's a 597 vote difference. These are many states where there are tens of thousands of votes different. And the Republicans have no legal case. They are politically distraught, but that's not going to create any success for them in the courts. Bobby.
I want to thank Senator Schumer and Senator Murphy, Senator Baldwin for being with us. I wanted to start today with the words of the president back in May. He said, and I'm quoting, "We want to terminate health care under," and what he called Obamacare, I'll refer to as the Affordable Care Act. Terminate health care. That was his goal. Now, everything he's done in his 4 years as president has been in furtherance of that goal, and everything Republicans in the Senate have done has been the same. So when I think about, for Pennsylvania, terminating health care under the Affordable Care Act, I think about a lot of numbers, 5.5 million people with a pre-existing condition, 1 million people lose coverage, but maybe more than the numbers, it's the people. Just in the last couple of weeks, and even in one case over a long period of time, I've come to know a couple of families who would be directly affected. So I don't think of the numbers. I think of Erin and her daughter Abby. I think of Shannon and her daughter Sienna. Sienna has Down syndrome. Abby has multiple complex medical needs. So for those mothers, destroying the ACA is personal to them and would devastate their lives. If the court strikes down the Affordable Care Act, it will be an act of injustice, and it would be, in my judgment, robbery, judicial robbery. People have coverage now and I won't go into all, but you already know the data, but that would be robbery by the court. And Republicans in the Senate for about a decade now have lied about this. They've lied over and over again. They said they would come up with a replacement. They never have. I don't think they ever even intended to, because they would have had it done by now. And they also lied that they could do it a different way. They can come up with a bill that covered more than 20 million people, had all the protections and all the gains for filling the donut hole, all the other protections, but they could do it a Republican less expensive way. That is a lie, and everyone knows that. So they've been lying for a decade about it. Now we're on the precipice of a Supreme Court decision in a few months that could wipe out all those gains. And here's what it wipes out in terms of Medicaid expansion. This has been a lifeline to so many Americans. We know that most of the coverage gains for Medicaid expansion in my home state, of the million who got coverage, 840,000 plus got coverage through Medicaid expansion. That means that someone who had a substance use disorder problem, subset of that is the opioid crisis, they got coverage and treatment because of it. Just in Pennsylvania, in 1 year, 2019, over 135,000 people were able to receive treatment for a substance use disorder